Hello, welcome to the Maya Toolbelt. This is Michael. Today I wanted to return to the Hypershade. The way I like to work with the Hypershade typically is to go through the Panels menu here, click on Panels, and then I'll go to Panel, and then choose the Hypershade. And this will convert my current camera view into the actual Hypershade instead of it being a floating window. So here's the Hypershade now. If I can click over here on the right on the channel box tab to kind of collapse the channel box over to the right like this. And so now the Hypershade just kind of fills my view. And another thing I like to do with the Hypershade is to go to the window menu here and click on Viewport. This opens a viewport like this, and I can dock this viewport into the Hypershade like so. So now I have a little window into my actual working scene right here inside my Hypershade. So it doesn't have to feel like I have to go back and forth to get to my perspective camera. I just have a little window right here so I can preview whatever's happening in my scene while I work in the Hypershade. So specifically today, what I wanted to talk about was the ramp texture. Over here in the create area of the Hypershade under 2D textures, I'll click that. If we look down here, we have ramp. Let me left click that right here to create it, and it creates the ramp texture. It comes with a 2D placement texture utility node like all 2D textures do. We're going to ignore that for now though, and just focus on the ramp itself. I'm going to close the material viewer just so I have more screen space for the property editor. And by default, it gives us this black to white gradient. Okay, so we have lots of different settings in here to kind of adjust how this ramp looks. And to see how it looks more specifically, I'm going to create an object to apply this ramp texture to. So I'm going to go to Create, we'll say Polygon Objects, and we'll just create a plane for now. I'm going to hide the grid and press the 6 key to turn on Shaded and Texture View. And I need a material to apply my ramp to. So over here in the Create area, I'm going to click on the Maya Surface Materials, and I'm just going to create a Lambert for now, like so. So I'm going to hook up the ramp texture to my Lambert material. I'm going to go ahead and middle mouse click the Lambert onto the plane to apply it. And then with the Lambert selected, you can see the Lambert's right here, Lambert 2. And we can rename this if we want to be ramp material or whatever name you would like to call it. You can see it change right here, ramp material. And here's our ramp. I'm going to apply the ramp texture to the color of my material. You can middle mouse click and drag it all the way up here. You can see that dotted line appear above over the color attribute. If I let go of that now, you can see this little line connects right here. We could also just drag from the out color and connect it straight to the color like this to do the same thing. And now on the plane I have up here, you can see that gradient effect on the plane going from black to white. So if I click on the ramp now, we can have a more visual representation of that ramp here on our plane. So if I were to adjust the ramp slider, you can see what's happening on the plane. It's mimicking this effect that we're having here in the ramp texture on the actual piece of geometry. So as you can see with this ramp slider here, and we can click this arrow to expand it out to be a bigger view if we'd like. We can drag this out and make this much bigger to work with. We can drag on these circles up here to move the color positions on this gradient like so. We can move them in closer together, for example, to get a more hard line through here as opposed to that gradation that's happening with them being farther apart. And whenever you click on one of the circles, you're selecting that color. You can see down here I have selected color. You can also see it here in the property editor. Whichever one I select, it'll update the selected color here. If I close this now and click on over here and over here, you can see that happening right here as well. Whenever this window is open though, this window here takes priority on what we're seeing here. That's why it's not changing over here. Okay. So the selected color right now is black, or if I click on this one, it's white. And you can change this color. If I left click on the white swatch here, left click, I can choose a different color with my color picker. I can choose red, for example, or blue, or purple, or I can go in here and choose a specific custom color that I want to use, like so. Same over here, I can click on this black circle to select this color, click on the black swatch here and choose a different color, yellow, green, custom, to get whatever kind of color I want to. If I want to remove a color from the ramp, down here at the bottom is a little square X. Click on that square with the X, it removes that color from the ramp. Now once you have one left, you can't just remove it, because then you would have nothing in the ramp to use. So if you left click inside an empty space on the ramp, you can actually create more colors, and you can create as many as you want. There is apparently, as I'm working on it here, I'm finding when I click on one of these little X's to get rid of a color, it actually closes the entire ramp expanded view, which is looks like a bug that I did not know about before recording. So because of that reason, I might refrain from using this if you wanted to get rid of a color. Let's just make this go back to black. And because of that bug, I think I'm going to actually close this and just use this view here instead of that expanded view. But this expanded view, these options down here with the interpolation, the selected color, selected position, and this vertical checkbox, which the vertical checkbox actually just changes the orientation of the ramp itself to be vertical if you'd rather. But because of that bug, I think I'm going to go back to horizontal, which is like this, and I'll close it and I'll just use this smaller view for now. So selected color, just like we saw before, when I click on these different color circles, it will select that color. We can change it here. We also have a slider to adjust the brightness value of that color that we have chosen. Just also keep in mind, this works for all colors, by the way. If I did choose a color, drag this down to black, and then drag it back up, now it's going to be white. It's not going to retain that color that I chose after it's dragged down to black. So I picked that kind of blue, dark blue color I picked here, or gray blue. And we can adjust its value as much as we want to. Alright, so that's the selected color. And that changes based on which circle you have selected from the ramp. And like I said, you can click in any empty space to create a new circle. Next is selected position. This circle up here is at the very far right, which is at the 1.0 position. The circle at the very far left is the 0 position, so it goes from 0 to 1. So this circle here, if I click on it, you'll see it's around the halfway point, 0.442. This color here, if I knew I wanted it to be specifically in the middle of the ramp, for example, I could type here 0.5, hit enter, and it will reposition that color to be right there in the middle. So you can type in a number here to change the positions of these colors that you select with the circles, change their positions with the value. For example, this one could be 0.75, enter, and it moves it to the 0.75 position on that 0 to 1 scale. Next we have U wave and V wave. There's U and V. Those are 2D coordinate directions. You could also consider those like almost like X and Y, but it depends on the object. Adjust the V direction, for example, you'll see it's kind of warp left to right, more than likely because we're dealing with this type of ramp, which is a V ramp. So the V wave works with the V ramp. The U wave doesn't do anything. If I chose to be a U ramp, however, now the U wave works, while the V wave does not. We're going to get more into what these types are in a little bit, but we're going through here first. So the wave, though, you can adjust this wave pattern, and you can see what happens with that ramp effect. It starts to get this wavy look to it. And the V wave, again, that's the V direction, which in this case is going kind of up and down on our plane. The U direction will be going left to right. Next we have a noise slider. You can see how we can adjust this. And the ramp itself here will not look any different, but you can see what it looks like here on the plane. Let me zoom in a little bit. It starts to add that noise effect to all the colors that we have in our ramp. The higher the noise, the more noisy it gets. This can be very handy for different things that we'll talk about in a little bit. Then we have noise frequency. You can kind of adjust just how busy that noise pattern gets. The lower the frequency, the less noisy it is. The higher the frequency, the much more erratic noise we have. Increasing this noise value and have a high noise frequency, we get this very kind of tie-dye psychedelic look. Take the noise back to 0. So those are your basic options for the ramp texture. Let's go back up here though to the type and interpolation pull down menus that we have up here available. So VRamp is the type of ramp. If you click on this pull down menu, we have lots of options here. The VRamp and URamp are the ones that we looked at just a minute ago, and that changes the orientation on the plane or on the object to be aligned with the U direction or the V direction. U and V, like I said, are 2D coordinates on a geometry, like referring to texture coordinates. So V direction goes up and down in this case, U direction left to right. Diagonal. Some of these are pretty self-evident of what they might do, especially when you click on them and look at what they do. Radial kind of has this point at the middle, and you see this, the left side of the ramp, which is a blue color, kind of has a line through here and it goes around this way to the far side of the ramp, which is kind of orangey tan color. That's a radial type. Then we have circular type, again starting in the middle and going outward. So this is like the middle of the circle right here where this blue color is, and it's going out to the outer ring of the circle with this tan color. A box ramp, again similar kind of thing, except now we have a box pattern. A UV ramp, it's kind of interesting. The four corners are that kind of orange color. That purple violet color is kind of circling the corners like this, and then it's going into this star pattern in the middle where the blue color is. Four corner ramp. You can see here we have this blue color over here. Going to this corner we have the purple color, and over to this corner the orange color. And then a tartan ramp. You can see what's happening there. I have the purple, kind of these plus signs. It's almost like the box ramp, almost, but with a kind of a diamond pattern and then being repeated 4 times. So lots of different kinds of styles of ramps. I would say 9 times out of 10 though, you're going to be using a V or a U ramp. You typically will want that ramp to go from left to right or up and down or up to down in whatever configuration you have set up over here. But occasionally though, these things do come in handy, especially with the circular ramp. I can see that coming in handy, and perhaps a diagonal. Some of these are more useful than others, but U and V for sure are what you'll be using 9 times out of 10. What is this used for? Like, aside from the color effect, you can apply this to the color. Okay, cool. Well, there are other things you could use it for as well. For example, so we have this ramp being applied to the color, right? Now, let me get rid of some of these colors. So let's say we just have these 2. Let's say, for example, I wanted to have the effect of, and let's go back to a V ramp like this. So now we have that blue color bleeding through to a tan color. Oh, by the way, before I get too far ahead of myself, let's go back to this interpolation pull down real quick. We have linear, we have exponential, up and down, and smooth, and so on. So the interpolation type is how the gradient is interpolating between the 2 colors. So interpolation of smooth, we get a nice smooth transition. Say exponential up, you can see slightly different than exponential down. You see that? So it's kind of favoring the orange color with exponential down. Exponential up kind of favors the blue color. We have a bump versus smooth. You can see the difference over here a lot better than you can here. Versus linear. So you can see it's very subtle, a lot of these things. Spike versus linear. So things are shifting just a little bit. I usually pick either linear or smooth. Smooth sometimes is nice. It gives you, make sure you have a nice smooth transition. That's what interpolation does though. So back to what I was going to say. Let's say we have this setup right here. So our ramp texture is bleeding a blue color into a kind of orangey tan color. However, what I can do is use this ramp and take 2 different textures. Let's say I take a texture of, let's say a checkerboard texture, and I want to bleed it into, let's say, a wood texture or something like that. So what I can do, let me pull this out over here so we can see better. I'm going to go back over here to my 2D textures and let's create a checkerboard texture. So this is a checkerboard. Zoom in on it, you can see it there, that kind of black and white checker pattern. Let's make another texture. I'm just going to look over here, see what we have. Let's say a fractal. Well, let's say a noise texture. So click on this. Now I have this noise pattern. You see it here. It's kind of black and white noise. So I have these two textures. And I'm actually wanting to use the ramp to bleed the checker into a noise from left to right. So what I can do is I had the ramp selected. I can see my colors over here. If I left click on this blue color, I have it selected. So you can see here selected color is this blue color. But what if instead of that blue color, it's a checkerboard? If I middle mouse click the checkerboard and drag it over here and let go over selected color, here you can see what happens. That selected color becomes mapped with the checkerboard. You can see here that checkerboard out color is being pulled into the ramp texture node. We do the same thing. I'll click on the ramp again, then I'll select this kind of brown orange color, but instead of that color, let's middle mouse click the noise texture over here and let go over selected color. There you can see what happens. It bleeds into that noise texture. So now I'm doing something else. Now instead of just bleeding two colors together, I'm bleeding two entire textures together. You see that? So this checkerboard pattern is blending into this noise, and I can control that noise right through here. You see as I move these color positions, it's changing how these two textures are interacting. I can swap their position like this, or if I want them to have a really sharp edge between the two of them like that, I can get these two colors really close together on my ramp like this. Or if I want them to be more gradual change. So this right here is very, very interesting, and in my opinion, much more practical a use of a ramp texture. This is, in my opinion, what the ramp texture is really most powerful for. Not just colors, but getting this kind of effect, bleeding two entire textures together. So over here with a checkerboard pattern, I can change it to be different colors if I want to. Instead of black and white, we can make it like red and let's say yellow. And the same thing kind of happens. It bleeds through here. So that's all through the ramp by applying different textures to the selected color of the different colors on the ramp. And again, like I said, you can left click in here and create another color. Right now it's this kind of orange color that we have going on. And I can go over here in my 2D textures and let's say I'll choose a cloth texture. Make sure my ramp's selected. Middle mouse click the cloth onto the selected color of that middle swatch, and now I have this checkerboard bleeding into this cloth, bleeding into the noise. So I'm blending multiple textures together like this in this gradient pattern through the use of this ramp texture. So let me look closer at this ramp node here in the Hypershade. If I left click on these three stacked ovals, it's actually going to once collapse, twice expand. And so now that I've expanded it once, you can see now where these textures are going into is the color entry list. This color entry list is hidden by default. You have to click on these little stacked ovals to expand the options available to be seen. So by left clicking this color entry list to expand it out here, you can see now I have color entry list 1, color entry list 2, 3, 4, and so on. And every time you create a new color, it's going to add an empty color entry list here. So you see this color entry list 4 is empty and it's waiting to have something plugged into it. If I expand these out again, you can see color entry 1 has a position, which right here is selected position, and a color. And the color is being mapped to the color of the noise in this case, for example. So that's where all these out color is being plugged into the color of the color entry list 1. And that's by expanding out this node here in the Hypershade so you can see where all these little lines are going. If I click it one more third time, you can see it expands out to its most maximum degree, and you can see all these other options that the ramp texture has to work with. But primarily though, if I click it one last time, it goes back to its default look. One more time to collapse it, the second time to get what I feel like is probably the most useful view to see the color entry list here. So this is the ramp texture. This is an incredibly powerful texture. This ramp is probably used more often than you might think. And again, it's not just for color, it's for getting this kind of effect where you're having different textures bleed into each other and do different effects. It's especially useful when used in conjunction with the sampler info node, which has that facing ratio attribute we talk about in that sampler info node video, where we can have a ramp applied to with a sampler info node where we can have different effects based on the geometry's outer borders, based on camera position, which is some very useful things that we talk about in that video. But again, the ramp is incredibly awesome in that situation as well. Anyway, this is just a small taste of what the ramp is capable of. Ramp texture, I feel like, is probably one of the most powerful tools to use to not just control colors, but also to control this kind of thing too. And I hope you enjoyed the video and learned a lot about using ramp textures. Thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, feel free to ask if you have any questions, or if you feel like I missed something important, I can definitely go back and comment on that. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I will talk to you later.